This video is going to have the answers and explanations behind all the problems to the upcoming tests that you have for geometry on surface area and volume and anything pertaining to those formulas. So the first set of directions, and please pay attention to the directions because that gives you a big clue as to which formulas you're going to need, is to find the volume of each of the shapes below. In order to find the volume, you also have to know what shape it is. So for number one, this is a cylinder. So on your formula sheet, you should find the cylinder and see that its volume equals pi r squared h. All right, so we're going to fill in the numbers that we need. Pi is 3.14. The radius, they didn't give you the radius, they gave you the diameter. So if 14 is the diameter, the radius would be 7. And then you're squaring that. How tall the cylinder is 10. Okay, so now you can type in your calculator 3.14 times 7 squared, which is 49, times 10, and then we're going to round it to the tens place. So you should come out with 1,538.6, and because this is volume, this would be kilometers cubed. Remember, if you've got a V, you've got to have a 3 in your answer at the end. All right, for number two, this is a square pyramid, and you can tell it's a square by the two 11s on the bottom, right? And for a pyramid, no matter which one it is, its volume equals 1/3 area of the base times the height, right? So remember, anytime you have a capital B in your formula, you've got to come off to the side and you've got to find what the area of the base is. So because the bottom of this shape is a square, you're going to have to come off to the side and do area of a square, which is side squared. In this case, that's 11 squared, which is the number 121. So in our formula, we're going to have 1/3, big B is 121, the height of the pyramid is 7. Okay, now remember with 1/3, you either type in the calculator 1 divided by 3, then do times 121 times 7, or you can do 121 times 7 and then divide by 3 at the end. Do not mix the two up, just pick one way and stick with it. So regardless of which way you go, you should come out with an answer of 282.3 meters cubed. For number 3, this is a triangular prism. Right, so we need to find the triangular prism on your formula sheet, and the volume formula is area of the base times the height. The base is a triangle, so we've got to come off to the side and find the area of a triangle. And it doesn't matter which triangle you outline. You can outline the bottom one or the top one. They should both have enough information to get to the same piece. So we're going to have to do 1/2 little b little h. Right, so using the triangle, the base and the height would be the 3 and the 4. So 1/2 of 3 times 4. 3 times 4 is 12. Half of 12 is 6. So when we go to our formula, we're going to have 6. The height of the prism is the number that connects the two triangles together, this side piece right here, which would be 9. 9 times 6 is 54, and it's miles cubed. Okay, number 4 is a cone. So we're going to use the formula V equals 1/3 pi r squared h. Right? And again, we have the 1/3 there. Pi is 3.14. If you look in the picture for the radius, they didn't give you the radius, they gave you the diameter. 18 is the diameter. Half of 18 would be 9, so your radius is 9 squared. And then the height is 18. Remember, you always want to do exponents first, so 9 squared is really going to turn into the number 81. So now type that in the calculator using the way you calculate it, and you should come out with a number that rounds to 1,526 inches cubed. Right, so know how to calculate volume of all the shapes that we've done so far. The next section of the test review is going to have you finding the surface area of the same type of shapes, but they're with different numbers and the shapes are turned a little differently. So now we're going to find the surface area of these things. Once again, know the name of the shape so you know where to find the formula. So for number 5, we do have another cylinder, and the surface area formula is 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r h. Okay, it's got a lot of more pieces to it, but it's not as hard to calculate. So we need 2 times 3.14. The radius is 10, so it's 10 squared, plus 2 times 3.14 times 10, and the height connects the two circles, so that would be the 8. Remember, in these types of problems, you have to do all the multiplications and get two numbers from there before you can add anything together. So when you do 2 times 3.14 times 10 squared, which is 100, you get 628, if you've calculated it correctly. When you do 2 times 3.14 times 10 times 8, you get 502.4. So when you add those two together, that will give you your surface area. And the grand total comes out being 1,130.4 kilometers squared. Remember, all area, surface area included, gets a 2 in the air. Okay. Number 6 is a triangular prism. Notice it's not sitting on the triangle this time because it's turned, right? But it is still a triangular prism. So the triangle is your base right here, and you may need some information off of that triangle to help you out, right? But the formula we need to use first is the HP plus 2 capital B. All right, remember the H is the height of the entire prism. All right, well, the height of the entire prism is the number that connects the two triangles together. So I'm going to outline the two triangles in red, and then hopefully that helps you see. If you take the top of each triangle, the front one, and connect it to the back one, that's your height of the prism. Okay, so 3 goes in the H spot. P stands for perimeter of the base. Well, the triangles are your base. We'll pick one. Okay, and each one of the triangles has 3 numbers. The 3, the 4 goes right here, and the 5. Okay, so 3 plus 4 is 7, 7 plus 5 is 12. So the perimeter is 12. Then you have to come off to the side, and you're going to have to find the area of the base, which is one triangle. So that's when we have to do the 1/2 little b little h. Okay, the base of the triangle is, remember the base and the height connect to make the right angle, so it's the two numbers that form that right angle box, is a 3 and a 4. Okay, do not use the 5. The 5 has nothing to do with the triangle in terms of the formula. 3 times 4 is 12, half of 12 is 6. So now we're going to put the 6 in the big B spot. Again, do your multiplications first and then you're adding. 3 times 12 is 36, 2 times 6 is 12. Now you can add the two pieces together. 36 plus 12 is going to give you a surface area of 48 feet squared. Be very careful because this is the trickiest shape for surface area that you will have to do, and it's very easy to mess up on. Okay, for number 7, you have a cone that's turned on its side. Right? But the surface area formula for a cone is pi r squared plus pi rl. And remember that in a cone and a pyramid, the L does not stand for length. It stands for slant height. So for pi, it's 3.14. The radius they gave you was 8, so 8 squared plus 3.14 times 8. And the slant height is when it's sitting up on its circle, what's the slanted number? And in this case, it's 17.9. So once again, we are going to do the multiplications first and round as we go, and then we're going to add those two numbers together. So 8 squared is 64. 3.14 times 64 should round off to give you 201. Then 3.14 times 8 times 17.9 is going to round off to give you 449.6. Now when you add those two numbers together, you get a surface area of 650.6 miles squared. Okay. Number 8 is a square pyramid, so we're going to use the pyramid formula, and that formula is 1/2 LP plus capital B. Remember, the L in this case is the slant height. Okay, so we have 1/2. If you look in the pyramid, the slant height is the slanted piece on the triangle, which is 9.8. Perimeter is adding up all sides of the base. You only see 2 8s, but remember that the back side is also an 8 and the left side is an 8. So it's 8 times 4, which is 32. And then to find area of the base, right, you want to take and find the area of the square. And remember, area of a square is side squared, so 8 squared, which makes 64. So your big B is 64. Now you want to take and do the multiplication part first. So 1/2 of 9.8 times 32, which gives you 156.8. Then add the 64. So that means your surface area for this pyramid is 220.8 kilometers squared. Okay, so once again, you need to know how to find the surface area of these shapes as well as the volumes. All right, so in the next section for 9 and 10, you're dealing with flat two-dimensional shapes. So we're not using surface area or volume. We're using plane area. All right, and you're going to have to take and divide these whole shapes into separate formulas to calculate the entire area. So again, you're finding total area, which means you have to add some things up, and the perimeter, which is around the outside of the shape. So let's go ahead and start with what we know from this picture. We see that there is a dotted line right here, which actually splits our shape into two pieces. It splits it into the semicircle at the top, and it splits us into the triangle at the bottom. So those are the two formulas we need to add together to get our area. So let's start with the triangle. Triangle formula is 1/2 base times height. The base of the triangle, or the bottom of the triangle, if you turn it over, is 9. The height of the triangle is how tall the triangle is. That's what this 11 is out here off to the side. Okay, so now when you take 9 times 11 and cut that in half, you end up with 49.5 for the triangle. The next piece we want to take and do is a semicircle. Remember that the semicircle is 1/2 of a regular circle. So regular circle's pi r squared, semicircle's 1/2 pi r squared. So we have 1/2, we have 3.14. If you look in the picture, 9 is the diameter, so you can't use 9. Cut 9 in half, and that's 4.5 for your radius squared. Okay, so start with the 4.5 squared, then do times 3.14 and take half of it, and you should get something that rounds off to 31.8. So now to find total area, you have to add those two numbers together. So when we add 49.5 and 31.8, we're going to end up with 81.3 centimeters squared. Okay, when you find total area, you have got to add separate numbers together. Now, perimeter is around the outside of the shape. We know that the right side of the triangle is 12, and these little hash marks right here mean that these are equal. So if the right side is 12, the left side is 12. So those two numbers take care of the outside of the triangle, but then we've got to figure out what the outside of the curved part is of the semicircle, this piece right here. So we have to go back to circumference, because circumference and circles go together. Perimeter doesn't go with circles. In a circumference of a semicircle, you're going to take half of whatever the regular circumference is. So the circumference formula for this would be pi d. Well, for a semicircle, you would use 1/2 pi d. So we have 1/2. We know pi is 3.14, and in the picture, the 9 is the diameter. So when you take and do 3.14 times 9 and take half of it, you're going to come out with a circumference of 14.1. That 14.1 is the distance around the outside of that semicircle. So now when we go to find the perimeter, right, you're going to add 12 plus 12 plus 14.1, and all of that's going to give you the perimeter part. So when you add those three numbers together, you do get 38.1 centimeters. Right? So everything is not just cut and dry and labeled in the picture. You have to do some calculations to get some of these pieces. All right, for number 10, same deal. Okay, it's just that now you have 3 rectangles essentially when you divide it up, and with those 3 rectangles, they're all going to have different measurements involved. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and split it up into rectangle here and here. So I'm calling this one number 1, this one number 2, and this one number 3. All right, so when I find the area of these things, I need to find the area of each one. Well, the area of each one is length times width. Okay, so for number 1, I'm going to use that formula. Then number 2, I'll do length times width. And for number 3, I'll do length times width. Okay, now before I can do any of that, there's some markings on this picture that tell us some key information. Notice they didn't give you all the numbers, but they gave you enough information with these markings that you can label everything. Right? If it has a 1 hash mark, like you see here with the 2, that means everything with 1 mark is a 2. So this one up here that has 1 hash mark, that's also 2 inches. Okay, there's no other 1 hash mark, so we know we're good on that one. Then go and find the 2 hash marks. Over here, there's a 2 hash mark, and it tells you it's 3. So here's a 2 hash mark. That means this one has to be 3 inches. And then there's a 2 hash mark down here, which means this has to be 3 inches. The only thing you don't have is across the top, but they give you enough information in the whole picture to figure out how much the top is. Right? You'll notice that 1 inch is right here, so that's 1. 2 inches is right here, so that's 2. 3 inches is here, that's 3. Add them up. 1 plus 2 plus 3 is going to be 6. So that means the entire top of all the shapes is going to add up to 6. And we'll need that number when we start doing the perimeter here in a minute. All right, so let's take care of the areas. For rectangle number 1, you need the length and the width. Remember, length number goes left to right. Width number is the side measurement. So in this case, it's 1 times 3. So area of rectangle number 1 is 3. All right, we're going to add to it the area of rectangle number 2. Well, rectangle number 2 has a length of 2. And a width of 1. And I know that because this piece right here is 2, and then this piece right here has to total the 3 that's on this side. Right? So 2 plus 1 is what makes 3. And then that gives us an area of 2. And then for rectangle number 3, the bottom is your length, that's 3. And the width is the side measurement, which is 4. So that's 12. So now when you add 3 plus 2 plus 12, you're going to get 17 inches squared. So it's not too difficult to do, you just have to know where to get your numbers from. Now for the perimeter purposes, all you're going to do is walk around the entire picture and add up all the numbers on the outside. So we're not concerning ourselves with anything inside. It's literally everything outside. Okay, so you don't need to know what shapes are divided up. Okay, all we need to know is what these numbers are about. All right, so we have this one is a 2, this one is a 3, this one is a 3, and that one's a 6. All right, so as you walk around, you are going to be adding up 3 plus 6 plus 4 plus 3 plus 3 plus 2 plus 2 plus 1. And once you get back to your starting point, you know you're finished. So if you start adding all those up, you can go from left to right, it doesn't matter, you're going to get a perimeter of 24 inches. Remember, a perimeter does not get anything other than plain units. All right, for 11 and 12, you'll notice there's some shaded spots, which means you have to cut out the shape on the inside. Those are your inscribed shapes. All right, so always do the outside shape first, the larger shape, and then cut out the smaller one. So in number 11, the outside shape is a circle, so we're going to have to start with pi r squared. Pi is 3.14. The radius, we don't have the radius, but this piece going across, that's your diameter, that's 10. So we know that half of the 10 is 5, so 5 squared is our radius. All right, so once we take and do these calculations, do 5 squared first times 3.14, you're going to end up with 78.5 after you round it. So that's the big circle. Now we're going to cut out of that big circle the triangle that you see. But in order to do that, we have to calculate the triangle. So that's 1/2 BH. Okay, and remember that your base and height are the two side pieces that come together to make your right angle box. So it's the two pieces that make that box happen, which would be your 8 and your 6. So 8 times 6 is 48. Half of 48 is 24. Now you're not finished yet because you haven't answered the question. If you are going to cut out the triangle from the circle, then you have to take 78.5 and subtract 24 from it. And the answer you get that's left over is all the gray stuff around the outside of the circle. So that leaves you with a total of 54.5 meters squared. And that's the official answer of all the gray matter around that circle. Okay, when you go to number 12, you'll notice that you have a rectangle, that's the outside shape, and a semicircle. So we're going to take the rectangle and cut out the semicircle. All right, so the first thing we want to do is find the area of the rectangle. Always start with your bigger shape first. All right, so length times width would be 7 times 9, which gives us 63. So we can't have an answer any bigger than 63 because that's the biggest the shape will go. Then we're going to do a semicircle, which is 1/2 pi r squared. We know pi is 3.14. The radius, we don't have the radius. We have this piece, which is the diameter, and that piece is 7. Okay, so half of 7 is going to be 3.5. So that's the radius that we're going to be using. All right, so now put your numbers in the calculator. 3.5 squared times 3.14. Take half of it. You should come out after rounding with 19.2. All right, so now we want to take and remove that semicircle from the rectangle. So you start with 63 minus 19.2. And then that leaves you with 43.8 centimeters squared. So that's your answer for all the gray matter in number 12. Okay, so you will be expected to have to be able to do that. All right, for 13 and 14, instead of giving you a shape that's built already, they've laid it out flat for you. So you're going to have to do two things. You're going to have to tell me what shape is it when you build it back together, and then calculate either the volume or the surface area for it, depending on which one it's asking for. So in number 13, you see two circles. Well, the only shape that has two circles in it is a cylinder. All right, so don't beat yourself up over trying to figure it out. Just use what you already know. And because it's a cylinder, we want to find the volume of the cylinder. That's what it asks us for. So on your formula sheet, you would find volume of a cylinder is pi r squared h. Pi we know is 3.14. The radius of the circle, it tells you very clearly, is 7. And the height of the cylinder is the number 19 when you build it all together. Remember, start with the exponent first, so 7 squared is 49. Then multiply 3.14 times 19, and it should round to the tens place automatically, but if it doesn't, round it, and you get 2,923.3 meters cubed. Remember, it's volume, so you have to cube it. All right, for number 14, you'll notice that you have 6 perfect squares. So when you build this thing together, it's going to be, and notice that the two numbers are 15, so that means that's another clue. All the sides are the same. They're all squares, so if you build it together, you're going to have a cube. There is no cube on your formula sheet, so if you did label this as a rectangular prism, we would also accept it, just because of the fact that you're not going to have that on the formula sheet. So when you go to use your formula, you are using the rectangular prism formula. And we are finding surface area for this one, right? So it is the longer one. It's the 2LW plus 2LH plus 2WH one. Now the nice thing about this is the length, the width, and the height are all the same number, right? So you're going to have 2 times 15 times 15, and you're going to have that 3 times. It all comes out the same in a cube. So once you do one of them, you can just add all three numbers together. Right, so 2 times 15 times 15 is 450. So you're doing 450 plus 450 plus 450. And that's going to give you the surface area. So the surface area of this cube is 1,350 feet squared. Remember, surface area is squared. All right, for the rest of these problems, you don't have a picture, you just have information given to you in word problem format. And you're going to have to make sure that you answer the question that it's asking for. So for number 15, it's asking you, what is the height of a cylinder if the volume is 997 feet cubed and it has a diameter of 8.4 feet? And to round your answer to the nearest whole number. In other words, don't leave me with a decimal. All right, the first thing you need to know is what shape it is. It's a cylinder. And the next thing you need to know is what formula to use. And you need to use volume formula. So we're going to use V equals pi r squared h. We need to figure out what parts do we know and what parts do we not know. Do we know the volume? Yes, it's the 997. So you're going to fill in 997 in place of the V. You are not calculating the volume in this problem. Do we know pi? Yes, pi is always 3.14. Do we know the radius? Well, not exactly, but they give us the diameter. So if you know the diameter, then we can figure out the radius. Diameter is 8.4. That means the radius has to be 4.2. That's still squared. Do we know the height? No, because it says what is the height. That's what's missing. So that h has to stay in h. Now, in order to mathematically figure this out, you've got to combine all those numbers over there on the side with the h. So you've got to multiply 3.14 times 4.2 times 4.2, or start with the 4.2 squared times 3.14, right? But you have to do those two pieces first. All right, so now that's going to leave you with 997 equals 55.4 h. And because 55.4 is being multiplied times h, we want to get rid of it, so we have to divide by 55.4. This is a one-step equation, just like you get at the end of a proportion. So you're going to solve it the same way. When you take 997 divided by 55.4, you are going to get a decimal, 17.99 something. So it says to round it to the nearest whole number, which means that it is closest to 18. It is being measured in feet, so the height of the cylinder would be 18 feet tall. That's all you need to figure out. Okay. All right, for number 16, it says a rectangular prism has dimensions of 2 centimeters long, 4 centimeters wide, and 9 centimeters high. If its length is increased by a scale factor of 5, what will the volume of the new prism be? Remember, if you change one attribute in your shape, then the volume is going to change by that same scale factor. So you're going to find first the volume of the original. Well, volume of a rectangular prism is length times width times height. So in this case, it would be 2 times 4 times 9. Okay, well, that makes 72. So the volume is 72 centimeters cubed. That's the original. The question is asking you, what will the volume of the new one be? Well, if it's getting 5 times larger, or scale factor of 5, then all you have to do is take 72 times 5, and that will give you your new measurement. And that will give us the new volume is 360 centimeters cubed. So remember, whatever the scale factor is, that's what you multiply by in order to get the new one. Okay. So for number 17, if the volume of a new prism is 12 times larger than its original volume, then the new height of the prism is going to be 12 times larger than the original. Whatever the dimension is that changed, that's also the scale factor that the volume changed by. Number 18, a can of Pringles is 30 centimeters tall with a diameter of 6 centimeters. How much space is inside the can? Okay, the key word being inside the can. Okay, and Pringles cans are cylinders, right? So we are dealing with volume of a cylinder, which is pi r squared h. Okay, we know pi is 3.14. They did not give us a radius. They said that it had a diameter of 6, so that means our radius is going to be 3 squared, and the height of the can is 30. Okay, so again, start with your exponents. 3 squared turns into 9, so take 3.14 times 9 times 30. Right, and you should get the volume for this Pringles can to be 847.8 centimeters cubed. Remember V3. All right, for number 19, you've got a box of snack crackers has dimensions of 4 centimeters wide, so that's your width right there, that's your W, and 15 centimeters long, that's your L, and 20 centimeters tall, that's your height. So there's your length, your width, and your height, but not in that order. How much larger is the surface area of a new box if the width is doubled? Right, so the first thing we want to do is figure out what is the original using the original numbers. And remember, surface area is 2LW plus 2LH plus 2WH. So that means that for the original box, this is the original, we are going to have to calculate the original surface area. So that would be 2 times 15 times 4 plus 2 times 15 times 20 plus 2 times 4 times 20. And remember, you must do all three multiplications before you can do any adding. So after multiplying the first group together, you get 120. After multiplying the second group together, you get 600. After multiplying the third group together, you get 160. So now once you add those three numbers together, the surface area of the original can is going to be 880, what are we using? Meters, centimeters squared. All right, so that's the original can. Well, now for the new can, it told you some key information. Okay, it told you that for the new can, the width is doubled. So you want to take your width number, which is this 4, and you want to double it, which means multiply it by 2. So 4 times 2 is 8. So you're going to use the exact same formula, but everywhere you had a 4, you're now going to change it to an 8. So for the first part of the formula, it's going to be 2 times 15 times 8 plus 2 times 15 times 20. That part did not change because it didn't have the width involved. Plus 2 times 8 times 20. That part did. So anywhere you had a 4, you're going to turn it to an 8, and you're going to do the same thing. Right? So now when you multiply the first group, you get 240. The second group, because it didn't change, is still 600. The third group, when you multiply it, you get 320. So now when you add these numbers together, the new surface area of the new box is 1,160 centimeters squared. So you've done all the hard work, but you still haven't answered the question. The question asks you how much bigger is the new box to the old box. So that's where you have to take the surface areas, 1160 and 880, and anytime you want to figure out how much bigger something is, you have to subtract it. So 1160 minus 880 is going to give you 280 centimeters. So the bigger box holds 280 centimeters more crackers, right, than the little box does. A lot of work, but that's how you have to get to the answer. There's nothing you can shortcut to make that any faster. And then for the last question, you have a simple shape of a cube. It only has one side because all the sides are the same, and it wants to know what is the surface area and the volume. All right, so let's start with the easiest formula, which is volume. Volume is going to be length times width times height. You use the same formulas that you do for a rectangular prism for a cube. The nice thing about it is your numbers are the same. So 4 times 4 times 4. And that's going to give us 64 inches, and it's volume, so it's cubed. Right? So the first answer for volume is 64 inches cubed. It doesn't matter which one you do first. For surface area, you're going to use the long formula, but all the numbers are going to be the same. So you're going to have 2 times 4 times 4 plus 2 times 4 times 4 plus 2 times 4 times 4. So the easy thing is to take one of them, and then after you get it, you write the number down 3 times. So 2 times 4 times 4 is going to give us 32. So we're taking 32 plus 32 plus 32. And that means that the surface area of this cube is going to be 96 inches squared. All right, so there's a lot of calculating that goes into this test, right? And it's a lot of formulas, but you have access to your formula sheet. Know how to use it and know how to type your numbers into the calculator. That calculator can be your best friend as long as you type it in correctly. Okay, so we'll take and go over any questions you have in class, and then you'll take the test, and we'll move on from there.